Thank you for coming to this panel. We have one more person that's going to join us in a short bit, but for now we have Justin Drake from the Ethereum Foundation, Mr. Beam Chain here in the flesh. And then we have Jon Charbonneau from DPA. Wonderful man right there, wonderful people. We're going to talk about the future of liquid staking on Ethereum. We've got 3 spicy topics that I want to talk to you guys about. I want to talk about long-term, the policy for issuance. Oh, hello, wonderful. We have Konstantin as well. Thank you for being here. So yeah, we're going to talk about the future of liquid staking, some topics. We're going to talk about issuance because all stakers care about that. We're going to talk about the future of solo staking and also the future of liquid staking. Let's get started with issuance. Right now, about 28% of total ETH is staked. And it is oft cited that the reason why is because of LSTs. That's why the total ETH staked is so high, so damn easy to stake. And that's one of the reasons why a couple EF researchers are trying to push for a reduction in issuance. My first question is, do you agree that LSTs are a detriment to the ETH's economic scalability? And do you think an issuance reduction is the best way to go about disincentivizing staking? Let's start with you, Jon.
Sure. I might push back on the reason that stake is so high. I saw you shaking your head and she was saying that too. I wouldn't say that LSTs are the reason that stake is so high right now. I would say that was probably the case, I don't know, right at the merge because that was what was there before. But now I think it's just a fact of, this is just the simply rational thing to do, and the market is just slowly getting more efficient. It's getting easier to stake everywhere, whether that's at Coinbase or Lido. And rewards do keep increasing as we keep staking more, which is what I'm sure we'll talk about. As far as issuance changes, I mean, my general stance has always been we're not Bitcoin. We don't have to have this strong stance, in my mind at least, of we can never touch this again. But I think there's an exceedingly high bar to touch the Ethereum issuance now, because there is still this trade-off of, I don't think we can never touch it, but you also don't want to have this perception of we're just fiddling with the thing because we're bored and let's see what happens. At least for me personally, I understand some of the arguments to reduce issuance for some of these incentives of maybe we want to reduce LSTs or because we're just overpaying or all these different things. In general, to me, my stance is, on the margin, I don't think that any of these changes are worth it today for the simple reason of, I think that Ethereum's monetary policy and issuance and staking ecosystem is actually really, really good. It is just the best of all of these other chains. So my general philosophy of there's a high bar to touch it. I don't think that Ethereum's crossed it today, but for example, I think that Solana should probably reduce its issuance because I think that they have generally less credible neutrality. There's probably a lower cost of fiddling with the thing now, and I think that theirs actually is too high, versus right now, if you look at even the worst case of, if stake goes to 100% and, even if fees are low, the inflation on Ethereum is I don't know, it's 1% or something like that. It's incredibly, incredibly low. So even in the bad case today, you basically have flat issuance if you're not staking. So you're not being heavily penalized. Yeah,
right now it's pretty good. I do agree with that. Justin, you're always looking way long-term into the future with all your plans. Is an issuance reduction the best way to tackle the proliferation of LSTs and the increasing rise of the percentage of totally staked, let's say 10, 15 years down the road?
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with everything that Jon said, that first of all, LSTs are somewhat orthogonal to the whole question, and the root cause is the fact that from a rational standpoint, the game is for you to stake because there's an opportunity cost to not stake. And even if all of the ETH is staked, you still have this 2% base issuance. And 2% is enormous. You probably won't get that anywhere else. And so your rational move is basically to stake your ETH and then maybe on top of that do other things. Now, I think some of the researchers have tried to put in a lot of effort to explain what the negative externalities of the end game, which is that basically almost everyone stakes, are. One of them is that it could potentially, well, first of all, there's the taxes issue. So let's do a little bit of math. Let's say that Ethereum reaches $1 trillion, and we have this 2% issuance, so that would be what, $20 billion issued. And then let's say that there's a blended tax rate across the world and like the different jurisdictions of 30%. That would be like $6 billion, right, of direct sell pressure, which could be kind of optimized away if we did things a little better. Another effect is that if the unit of account for collateral in DeFi would potentially move to an LST as opposed to being a pure ETH, and then the wrapping process unfortunately adds some amount of non-credible neutrality. So you're introducing a new brand, you're introducing a new token potentially, you're introducing a new security assumption with governance and smart contract bugs or all sorts of things. And so this diminishing of the credible neutrality could basically affect the monetary premium of ETH, the asset. And then I had a third reason, which is that a lot of the people don't understand and appreciate the difference between like real yield and nominal yield, and kind of the left side of the curve in some sense. Really like the story of scarcity, with Bitcoin and 21 million limit. And so if we can limit the amount of nominal yield, then I think we'll be in a position where basically the real yield, the burn, will more than compensate the issuance. Supply will go down. ETH will be able to sound money. It will be an even more compelling story than Bitcoin. And even though to a large extent it's mimetics, I think it's important for some subset of the population.
Those three, were they compelling to you, Konstantin? I mean, what are your thoughts on those three? Any one of those three you want to dig deeper into?
Yeah, I think that, like when we discuss this topic, first of all, 30 minutes is not enough, and second, it's a lot of misconceptions, first of all, if it's 20 billion emission, it doesn't mean it's like a pressure to sell, nobody sells taking rewards if we look on data. But it's a lot of other misconceptions, and I think that the question is, the topic is complex, it's a lot of details, it's about economy, but we need to go to this topic from objectives. And what is the objective of, minimal viable issuance? I think it's even like in our wording is super bad, why? Because when you think about what is the objective is a healthy decentralized network, and this is the biggest value, is the biggest difference of Ethereum. Ethereum is the most distributed in the token supply, is the most decentralized network. It's almost impossible to uncopy. And when you came with a proposal with minimal viable issuance, it's like you came to the company and say, let's pay you the minimal viable salaries. Will you have the best talents, will you have the best ecosystem? No way. And I think, it's the first meme that I will try to fight against, And then when you have an objective, okay, what metrics you want to achieve? Do you want to achieve special staking ratio? And I think staking ratio is important. Why? Especially now with deregulation, maybe in US, it will be more staking in ETFs. It will be more staking Coinbase. And it's a question how much the centralized actors in the custodies, how much ETH they will have. Because if they will have 30% of ETH and all of them will be staked, this is issue for all proof of stake concept, maybe we need to do something else, and it's definitely influence on what should be the strategy, in case of issuance. But when we try to think, okay, we have high issuance because, our money meme, it's also because, people will stake and, don't spend money. It's also, I think, misconception. Why? Because if Ethereum want to be a money, they want to be a 10 trillion, assets, and to be 10 trillion assets, you need to just all be already, it's better to not spend it, if it's been about economy. And 2% issuance is not make it worse, it's not make you keep your asset, longer because of the issuance of staking and so on. You just still need more, your supply will grow up. And so for me, when I look on issuance, it's when you just cut it, it has more minuses than pluses, for example, it's also maybe not things that we should think first, but a lot of activities also like leverage staking in DeFi, and if you cut the issuance, all this activity going down, and I think that there are a lot of new primitives of DeFi are building just on this staking rewards, and for me, it's, if we think about the objectives, if we figure out that the main value of Ethereum is decentralization, if you want to keep it, what should be the strategy? What parameters we should maximize? And I think I would focus more on staking ratio.
Yeah, I think a lot of still questions to be answered about the next steps around the issuance policy for sure. And I appreciate the contrarian takes too on this panel, Konstantin. Looking ahead, because I think there's some differing opinions. Ideally, what would you like to see long-term, the role of ETH versus LSTs in the Ethereum ecosystem and their relative outstanding supply to one another? What do you think would be the ideal for the health of Ethereum's ecosystem, and why?
It's difficult because I think there's like multiple kind of embedded factors in that. But the very short answer for me is I actually don't have a strong distinction between the two. What I have a much stronger preference and distinction over is what do those LSTs look like, and then what is the composition of stake underneath that.
If it was Lido LST.
Yeah, example, like simple literal example, I would prefer a world where 100% of Ethereum is staked and 100% of it is in Lido, but this version of Lido has like a perfect community module and like really great like dual governance that we're all super happy with, and like they have 1 million operators behind the scene, versus the world where, oh, we only have like 40% of ETH staked and like, only 30% of that is in LSTs, but like BlackRock has like a super majority of stake. Like that's a much, much worse scenario to me.
Yeah.
And that actually gets to one of the points that you were talking about in your previous answer, which is actually part, I agree with most of what you had said, but one part I actually do push back on a little bit is, so as I was saying, the most important point to me is composition of stake. One of the reasons I'm not like strongly in favor of pushing the issuance in really either direction, up or down, is I am not convinced that any of these changes to the issuance curve will actually result in a meaningful composition change at the validator set in equilibrium. I don't think that they will. Whether we drop it by 20% or increase it by 20%, I think that there are probably going to be in practice short-term consequences. I don't think that they meaningfully change what the equilibrium actually is. So I think that we need to like take practical, literal steps to try to change the stake composition. And that ends up looking like I would much rather Lido end up with stake than BlackRock ends up with all the staking ETF Ethereum.
Agreed. I don't actually think issuance is the thing that will change stake distribution that much, and there's lots of other ways. But interesting that you said, in that future, like 100% LSTs with Lido having this like maximally decentralized, like permissionless CSM. Justin, you had kind of mentioned in your previous answer, though, there's those kind of like stickiness with the wrapping and some of the inefficiencies. Thoughts on the question around the long-term role of LSTs versus ETH, or anything you wanted to respond to in Konstantin's prior answer?
Maybe I will start and then you can reply. Yeah. So for me, first of all, about question about LST, I think about it's also like myth, never it will be like 100% as a staked, if you look on data, we have a lot of blockchains with much higher issuance, like 20% and so on. And we see that staking saturated about 66%, I think the maximum on these networks. And it's also like, why? Because, you have different profile of users. Some people are blocked by regulation, that's why they not stake. Some people just want to be liquid and so on. And so, I think even like in 20 years, it's not, even like if you change nothing, it will be no one LST. It will be a bunch of different products. Some of them will be risky, not LST, but LRTs, people want to have more risk. Look on Aguilar, Symbiotic, and other, how much money going there. And it will be some other centralized, like BlackRock and Coinbase. And there are But what I again disagree with John, like, and it's good to have a discussion around that composition can be different, because if you will target like, and when you target something, it's not bad. Now we are like Ethereum not target anything, like, I mean, in case of it's just a curve, like that, and market defined amount or staked assets. And if you target for 30%, for example, and then your issuance going down, it means that it will be much lower amount of companies that will come and start to fight for that market. For example, OBOL, SSV, they will never build their products. Why? Because, and for example, new solutions will never launch new liquid staking. Why? Because if they understand that BlackRock and Coinbase total has 30%, and they will have the lowest price to validate this network, and their issuance will go into 1%, it means that the budget is going down, like, and a lot of, and to build new infrastructure, to in general, for Lido, like this price to run a validator set is many times higher, and that means that like competition will be low and the validator set will change. And I think that staking ratio help us to be protected from one parties have a lot of stakes, that especially centralized parties that can stake it, like more efficiently. That is
interesting. Also, that you kind of push back on the winner-take-most dynamic of LSTs as well. Justin, any kind of thoughts you want to add onto this?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. The first one is where I would put the capping. At the very least, I'd have a 50% cap. And the reason is that this gives us the invariant that most of the ETH is not staked. And so if it's kind of the most dominant unit of unit of account that's going to win out, then it's not going to be one of the LSTs. I think that's a healthy boundary. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that a lot of the proposals for changing issuance are actually not plus 20% or minus 20%. They're much more radical. And one of the things that they do basically is that they force the market to discover the true rate of issuance. So the basic idea basically could be that you make the issuance curve go to 0, and then if the cost of staking is 25 basis points, then naturally what will happen is that the market equilibrium would be 25 basis points of issuance to kind of compensate for the cost of staking. Now, one of the points that's kind of been brought up repeatedly with Coinbase and BlackRock is basically this idea of a discouragement attack. Let's say I'm huge, I have X% of stake, and I have more than the cap. Then what I can do is I can single-handedly just flood the market and discourage everyone else from participating. And that's something that we do want to prevent. And I think if we were to set a cap at 50%, then that would be extremely healthy. And the reason is that no entity has anything remotely close to 30% of stake, 50% of stake.
On this kind of topic, one other solution that I heard whispers of a long time ago, but don't hear about anymore, is potentially a native liquid staking solution, enshrining a liquid staking solution inside of Ethereum and the Ethereum protocol, similar how do we enshrine relays, to solve some problems. Is that a credible solution in your view? Is that something you think could be the solution or one of the solutions? But if not, why? Because I want to know why it died as an idea.
Yeah, so the way that I think about it is that if you want to have an LST, there's basically two components. One is that there needs to be some sort of delegation mechanism, and then two, there needs to be some sort of like abstraction and fungibility layer where you're abstracting away various operators. And that's exactly what Lido is doing. And the reason why you need this abstraction layer is because every different operator has a different risk-reward profile. So each operator has different like slashing risk and liveness characteristics. And I think it will be impossible or very, very hard for the L1 to basically do this abstraction fungibility layer. On the other hand, delegation is pretty trivial. And this is something that has been thought through, and I think it's something that could be very valuable to do, for example, in the Beam chain. So one of the ideas, for example, is to have this really flexible form of delegation where you can delegate one portion of what it means to be a validator, but not another portion. So for example, you could delegate the attesting part, but you don't delegate the creation of inclusion lists, or vice versa, or some other combination. Because the validators would be basically doing three things. They'd be attesting, proposing inclusion lists, and proposing the beam blocks.
Interesting. Lots of kind of variables, things that could change with the staking ecosystem moving forward. Konstantin, what would you say is the end game for Lido in specific? And what concerns you the most looking into the future where you see what Lido looks like 20 years later?
Yeah, I think it's a big question, and we don't have an answer for it. But in my particular view, Lido is fully aligned and fully dependent from Ethereum, And the question for Lido is Lido want to push more fees to Ethereum, for example, contribute to Ethereum development? Because what's Ethereum need, it can't, build everything internal, in general, they can't overcomplicate the protocol. And what Lido do, they in general are taking staking logic outside of the protocol. So one of our next ideas is to build infrastructure for staking. That's not only liquid staking, And there, you can do delegation just by smart contracts, You don't need a native staking because native liquid staking, I think the problem is how to distribute the weights. It's like a governance. You need a governance to distribute, the parameters to manage it, But you can build some type of delegation just by smart contracts already right now. And for Lido, Lido is focused on Ethereum. Lido want to, in general, build more infrastructure for staking and put it out of the Ethereum complexity, build an open market. But what also Lido has two opportunities, to grow fees inside of the protocols, for example, launch native rollups or something other things, in terms of grow, Ethereum utility. But if, our Ethereum, I don't know, community want to cut always Lido, for example, fees, then it is a story. For example, Lido contributors or Lido DAO distribute a lot of funds to build native rollups, double Ethereum fees, but the revenue of Lido going down. And it is a disalignment, and I think that what Ethereum Foundation should think, in Ethereum community, is how to align good players, DAOs that are really decentralized, that contributing a lot to the mission, to security of Ethereum, to their, how to align more L2s, that they are in general bringing this value through Beam, for example, by verifying their proofs on inside of Ethereum, and how to align all these partners that they built in general fees and bring it to Ethereum. And what is our call to action, what we really, Lido community, want to hear and collaborate with Ethereum is in general, what is Ethereum, not a North Star, people a lot of saying about that, but is Ethereum want to generate more fees? If yes, can Lido help it? If Lido community can help, let's align on it. And we are happy to build more. We are I think everybody, nobody think about Solana or other chains. I think Lido is the most closest friend to Ethereum, and the most dependent party. And yeah, that's the future of Lido is Ethereum.
The future of Lido, Ethereum's most closest friend. Interesting. Jon, thoughts on that? What do you think is the end game for Lido? What do you think its role is going to be? And yeah.
Sure. Yeah, my very simple vision for it gets back to most of the stuff that I said before. I want all the simple features of making it as neutral and minimal as possible. Good governance, which is very minimized, very slow moving, a lot of operators, all of that. But really, the primary function to me is once you assume that, how do you make sure that this thing beats out BlackRock and Coinbase and all of those alternatives? I really do want a world where Steth and other more decentralized LSTs are winning out, and then we don't just end up with BlackRock and Coinbase with all the stake, because I think there's a very, very high risk of that happening. So most steps that I want to see are kind of in that direction. And similar to Justin's comments before, Konstantin's, I pretty much agree with all of that. I don't think that there's a world where a native kind of enshrined LST makes any sense. One, because I similarly don't think any of the designs make like enough sense on a technical level because of, for example, the fungibility issues. And I think this is also just like way too much of just kind of a neutrality type of issue of doing something that's basically just rugging kind of the feet of a lot of private protocols that have built on top of Ethereum. But I do really like the delegation ideas potentially to put into Beamchain.
Yeah, that's fair, and overburdening the protocol perhaps unnecessarily. On that topic of concerns around like BlackRock's and Coinbase's taking over and wanting a decentralized permissionless alternative to stay competitive. In the last couple minutes, I think we should give some time to talk about the problem of solo staking because convenience always wins out. And it does detrimentally impact the decentralization of Ethereum. Solo stakers are at an extreme disadvantage to professional staking entities. What do you see as like the most effective, like long-term solution to keeping solo staking viable on Ethereum? Because it's a really hard problem to solve. I mean, thoughts, John?
I honestly think the general trend is that it will continue to decrease. I mean, the reality is that like we have we have like a reasonably healthy solo staking market today. I think a lot of that is in practice a result of the fact that most of the staking market is incredibly inefficient today. And what is going to happen over time is the fees are going to get ground down on all these protocols. You're not going to be able to charge 10, 20% anymore as a staking provider. And as those get ground down and there's very, very thin margins there, it's going to be much, much, much harder to have that make any sense as a solo staker. In the extreme where I think that ends up leading is you probably need some very explicit subjective incentives, whether that's from a liquid staking protocol, to just be very explicitly saying like, hey, we know who you are, we know you're a solo staker, you get like a slight reward boost. And on the margin, that is like enough of a small difference in rewards delta, you know, for Steth versus like BlackRock or whatever, that like users aren't actually going to care between the two. And then that will be like an actual differentiated feature is that like we are supporting a decentralized validator set, and it's a relatively low cost to do that. But you may just end up needing like very explicit incentives in the long run of like, hey, we know you're a little guy, we'll let you make a little more money.
I literally could not agree more. But that also means that like you need another like entity like Lido to be able to differentiate and determine themselves like who the heck is a solo staker, because like the protocol can't do that. Justin, thoughts on this?
Yes, so I have the exact opposite take.
I'm too.
I think that we're going to see a renaissance and a boom and a golden era of solo staking.
How so?
How so? So in some sense, the Beam chain is designed for solo stakers. So one of the big features of the Beam chain is that we would be reducing the minimum deposit from 32 ETH to just 1 ETH. So that's like 1.5 orders of magnitude. And there's been some market research that suggests that the number one reason why people don't stake is because they don't have 32 ETH, which is roughly $100,000. So that's already like a huge improvement. And I call it fish staking, as opposed to today, which is whale staking.
Doesn't that exist with Lido and Rocket Pool already? Solo stakers can already stake with 1 ETH.
Okay, so when you said solo staking, I assumed you meant solo operating. When you are, because that's what people usually mean by solo staking. Now, the other way in which I think solo operating will dramatically become easier is through the real-time snarkification of the Beam chain and of the EVM chain. So right now, you need, a laptop, running Geth or whatever, some other execution client and consensus client, and you need 2 terabytes of hard drive. And in the future, the meme is that you can stake on your smartwatch. And I call it feather staking because you need almost no hardware to stake. And then the final aspect of being friendly to solo validators is what I call Zen staking. So right now, if you want to be like a really efficient staker, you have to worry about many different things. You have to worry about which relays you connect to. You need to start playing timing games. you need to worry about MEV smoothing, and soon you're going to have to worry about pre-confirmations. And all of these worries will just go away with attested proposer separation. So basically, the main thing that you have to do from the point of view of a rational Solo operator is just attest. And attesting is the simplest thing in the world. It's just have a look if the previous block arrived on time. If it did, vote yes. If it didn't, vote no. And that's all it is. And then when you combine those three, what I'm basically hoping is that we're going to see this renaissance of Solo staking.
Wow. Fish staking, feather staking, Zen staking.
Yes.
The North Star that stakers can look towards. That's kind of very interesting. I didn't know that was part of the Beam chain. I think we're out of time, but Konstantin, any final thoughts that you want to share on that topic of the viability
Yeah,
of
first of
Solo
all, you know, like I'm running nodes from 2016 by myself. I put service in data centers by my hands, you know, like, so I have some experience in running nodes, you know, like, and I'm not DevOps, you know, like so in general I had a friend who's DevOps and we did it together, you know, like, and when Ethereum started, you know, like it was a hard time. I mean, I think we overestimate how many Solo stakers we have right now. That's why I'm so positive that it will be more, you know, like. And why? Because, you know, like back in the beginning, early days, you know, like even professional validators were not ready to run it. Why? You need to invest a lot of money to have a team, stable team. It's, ton of money, you know, like it's $100,000. Then you need to find a stake, and professional validators didn't have the stake, you know, like I've spoken with all of them. They were our competitors, but they were also our friends. Why? Because we have the same values, you know, like, and we've spoken with all of them, the biggest one, you know, like, and nobody going to launch Ethereum staking on a launch phase. Why? Because it was just hard. It was so hard to, in general, attract stake. It was only custody side way of staking, you know, like it was withdrawals, keys that you can't withdraw money. It was so many ways why people didn't stake, you know, like, and that's why we start Lido, because, you know, like, my initial idea, I am invested in Ethereum, and I believe in all the future, and I'm a builder, you know, like, that if we will not build, you know, like, something to fix it, you know, like, then Ethereum will be centralized, you know, like, and we deliver it, and I think that now we are facilitating Solo staking. We call it community staking in general, with low amount of fees you can run nodes and make staking simple with some boxes, you know, like. And I think that we have so low bar of Solo staking that it is an opportunity to grow it with the adoption of technology and making it simple, you know, like if you can buy it, you know, like if we will make it a culture to run a node, if we will give more ways of staking, then we will grow Solo staking a lot. And I think that it is, of course, some centralized power, you know, like of centralized custodies and like exchanges that will have more assets. But it's the other part of communities that will want more decentralization, and they will run nodes, you know, like it is, for example, community or staking team, you know, like in Lido, that come into different companies and say, just buy the boxes, just run it. We'll help you to do it, you know, like, and we onboarding more and more and more validators. Now we have 300. We can have 1,000 and 10,000 in future.
Yeah, keep it simple. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I do want to kind of give also the downside of the Beam chain when it comes to Solo staking, which is that unfortunately the way that the post-quantum signatures work is that they don't have the same structure as BLS, and so DVT becomes basically very, very hard to do unless you're in the special case of K out of K.
Interesting.
So, you know, if you're a professional operator that just, you know, is splitting the key over multiple servers, that's perfectly fine. But if you're like, you know, DVT, you know, community module, where it's like 2 out of 3, then that's not really friendly to the post-quantum signatures that we have. But the good news is that the minimum deposit will be 1 ETH, right? And so if today basically you're splitting 32 ETH over, you know, let's say 5 operators, that 1 ETH is still less than 32 divided by 5.
But we hope the price of it will be 32 times higher, so...
That is true. That is true.
Well, thank you guys so much. This was a really great discussion. Thank you, John, and Drake, and Konstantin.
Thank you.
Justin.